Good morning, this is TGC Requiem. I am here with a updated green-black Elves deck tech. Um, just been feeling like I wanted to play some Elves lately, and so I was kind of thinking through some of the changes I might want to make. Um, and so there's not a whole lot new here. I mean, you still have the basic Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Heritage Druid, Nettle Sentinel, 16 1 drops. Mystic and Llanowar Elves are both just tap for adding one to your mana pool. Heritage Druid is tap 3 elves to add 3 green mana to your mana pool. And Nettle Sentinel pairs really well with Heritage Druid because whenever you cast a green spell, you may untap it. And so, the ideal combo is Heritage Druid plus 2 Nettle Sentinels. You cast a creature, both your Nettle Sentinels untap, and you tap your summon sick creature with your 2 Nettle Sentinels to cast more, and you can kind of just chain them until you run out of cards. Um, Heritage Druid also can tap for 3 off 1 Dwynen's Elite, which is why it pairs so well when it enters the battlefield. If you control another elf, put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token on the battlefield. And then we go. What I had been playing was more of I like to call it versus the different versions of elves I've played, Velocity Elves. Running 4 Elvish Visionary, several Lead the Stampede, several Sylvan Messenger, um, to kind of I don't know, essentially try to never run out of elves to cast. I guess the problem I have is Lead the Stampede, while in some matchups is fine, really is not what you're looking for. It just delays your game plan as you load up on elves, and you can't really finish. Um, and this could just be a part of working our way through this, but I just never want to draw more than one Lead the Stampede ever, and sometimes I don't want to draw it at all. So I kind of have decided I just want to go down to one Lead the Stampede. Now, part of that is I want to get Court of Calling back in there. Um, I found that Shaman of the Pack can be really, really good. Um, I've been running 3, hoping to get it off of Collected Company. Um, for anybody who doesn't know Collected Company, look at the top 6 cards of your libraries, put up to 2 creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Primarily, I was trying to hit Shaman of the Pack off of Collected Companies, Cavern of Souls, or Guiltleaf Palace, which unfortunately meant I was unable to hard cast it in a few scenarios where I feel like I might have wanted to. So part of what I've done here is I've cut Lead the Stampede down to 1 copy, and I've increased. So I had 2 before. I cut 1 for Court of Calling. Likewise, I cut 1 Sylvan Messenger for a Court of Calling. Part of that was I have the ability to chord for a Sylvan Messenger, which is not Lead the Stampede, but it's close enough to Lead the Stampede, and being chordable offers some value. In fact, I'm almost tempted to cut Lead the Stampede altogether, but there are games where it's very useful to reload your hand like that. Excuse me. And you may not be able to chord for 7 to get a Sylvan Messenger. And then I added a 4th Shaman of the Pack by cutting 1 Azuri. So a lot of times Azuri, first of all, Azuri is phenomenal, gives you some combo wins that you wouldn't win without. But a lot of times he just gets put on the battlefield and dies before you can do anything with him. Where Shaman offers this kind of immediate benefit of draining your opponent and also putting them within combat damage range, where you can go wide with your elves. So this is kind of where I am. The only other thing that I might consider, I'd really like to try and get a second Elvish champion in the 75 somewhere. I'd really like to be able to bring in 6 lords. We have Elvish Archdruid already. I'd like to bring an Elvish champion times 2, but I just haven't quite figured out where I want to do that yet. Now, the other thing I did to help with Shaman of the Pack is I did add 2 Overgrown Tomb. So now I have 10 sources to hardcast Shaman of the Pack, along with the ability to chord for Shaman of the Pack and the ability to collect a company for Shaman of the Pack. So, to some regard, we've kind of changed this from being a focus on an Azuri win con to a focus on Shaman of the Pack win con. But Azuri is a legend, and again, there's still going to be wins that you can get with Azuri, and it's not to say that Azuri is less important than Shaman, but he's only really important when you have the mana to use him, which means really he should not be more than a 3 of, but it's also possible 2 is enough, and so that's kind of the plan or the what we're going to try and go for here. Changes to the sideboard. We have essentially added 2 Damping Matrix. I cut one of my Chalice of the Voids, and then I cut a Dismember to add Damping Matrix. Damping Matrix, oops, let's get one of those over here. You can already see it. Damping Matrix activated abilities of artifacts and creatures can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So, one matchup that has been troublesome has been Twin. And, I mean, you still get some wins because they don't always go off right away. But activated abilities of artifacts and creatures can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So, Torpor Orb has always been really good against Splinter Twin, but Torpor Orb also shuts us down pretty hard. I mean, if you look at it, you've got Twinen's Elite Elvish Visionary, Shaman of the Pack, all triggering ETBs under the battlefield effects, as does Sylvan Messenger. So it does hit this deck pretty hard as well. Maybe not the worst, but pretty hard. Damping Matrix only shuts down Azuri. However, against Twin, an Azuri win is not that likely anyway in regards to Lightning Bolt and Counter Magic. And so, really, I find the better route is to try and win off Shaman of the Pack through a Cavern of Souls and straight combat damage. And so, I think Damping Matrix is an easy slot in for Azuri, or maybe mostly for Azuri. And since Splinter Twin gives the creature the activated ability, this shuts down the creature that would have Splinter Twin attached to it. So that's a big reason why I got it. The other reason I brought it in is that it shuts down a lot of affinity. So certainly it does still allow them to use their Springleaf Druids, and it allows them to use their Mox Opals, but it does not allow them to equip a Cranial Plating, does not allow them to activate a Steel Overseer, does not allow them to activate an Arcbound Ravager, etc., etc. Now, it doesn't mean they can't beat us with straight combat damage around that, but the odds of them beating us are less. So, now the reason I'm willing to play Damping Matrix here is the same reason I'm willing to play Choke. We can turn to this fairly easily, and so this is kind of the new approach that I'm taking for those matchups. The other matchup that I'm considering bringing this in for is Tron. doesn't stop everything in Tron, but what it does stop is Expedition Map and Oblivion Ring. And while that is not a large portion of their deck, it is enough of a portion of their deck that is troublesome to us that it may be worth it. So if they have to find their Tron through cycling, that's better for us than if they can specifically go get the cards they need. It doesn't shut them down completely, and it's possible that Damping Matrix just isn't worthwhile against them. And if that's the case, we may decide that we want to go another route. It's possible we just want to do the Ley Lines of Vitality against them. I'm also keeping 3 Ley Line of Vitality in, even though in some ways it seems like it might not be that great. It's good against Burn. It is also good against all the Pyroclasm decks, which would be Tron and excuse me, it'd be good against Tron and Splinter Twin, and I'm trying to think of other decks that run Pyroclasm. Probably decks like Grixis, Control. So, anywho, that is changes. Beyond that, we still run Beast Within. Beast Within helps in a variety of matchups. Primarily, this is going to be in there for Tron and for Amulet. Excuse me. To try and blow up their land when they go for it, if you will. Chalice of the Void stays in. It can help against Burn if you can get it onto 2 against them. It's also, and then again, ideally we have Cavern to power our own creatures through. The other thing Chalice can be good at is playing it at 0 against Amulet. So if you do that, you can shut down their packs, etc. Fracturing Gust 2 of is just it's just a requirement in my opinion. I mean, it's good against Affinity. Oh yeah, that was the other thing I forgot. Damping Matrix also good against Lantern Control, which could be troublesome. So Fracturing Gust also good there, and Fracturing Gust is also really good against 8-Rack. I mean, it's not something you run into a lot, but very good. And Spellskite just to try and slow down, and part of the reason for Chalice of the Void as well, Bogles. Both of these cards can help fight Bogles, and Infect for that matter. But yeah, so also Beast Within, Dismember. Those are good for Infect. Choke, obviously good against Twin. We could talk about all the individual matchups that these cards are good at, but right now I'm trying to work on gearing this sideboard to fight the popular decks that this deck has trouble with. What I'm trying to do is kind of get to a point to determine for the Grand Prix in Detroit in March if this is a feasible deck to take, or if I'm going to be needing to take something else. And so we're kind of hoping to run into some Affinity, hoping to run into Tron, hoping to run into Splinter Twin, as those have been the toughest matchups. I actually don't find Jund to be very difficult at all. Jund, the 1-for-1 removal just isn't good enough, and so we tend to be okay there. So anyway, we're gonna try and do a league and see how that goes.